Willy, Willy, up the bank, and Willy, Willy, down the brae, and Willy, Willy, yon burnside, where I and my love want to gae. I leaned my back until an ache, thinking it was a trusty tree, but first it bent and syne it brak, say my true love did lie to me.
Hello everyone, and welcome to A Maker's Pilgrimage, a podcast about contemplation, ecology, and the fiber arts. I'm Aidan, the knitting monk, and I'm coming to you from Holy Cross Monastery in New York's beautiful Hudson Valley. Welcome back to those of you who have watched the podcast before, and welcome to any new viewers. I'm so glad that you decided to give it a try. You can find me on a variety of social media, but most especially on Instagram and Ravelry with the username Knitting Monk. It's been a little while since I have podcasted, probably about 6 weeks. It's largely because I've been busy, and I also just really haven't had a lot to say. I realize I can sometimes put a lot of pressure on myself to have a whole kind of program and set of reflections put together to share with you all. And I didn't have anything come to me. And so this may be a little bit of a kind of less put together, tied up with a bow sort of podcast episode. But I realized, I wanted to connect with you all, and I do have some projects to share, and I would just record and see what happens. So if it ends up being jumbled, my apologies. But as I'm always saying about our fiber arts practice and about living an ecologically sound life, and about the spiritual life, it's not about perfection. It's just about being real and giving things a try. So I'm going to take a dose of my own medicine and do some of that with you today. It's Lent in the Christian calendar, and some of you have asked me about Lenten practices and books and that kind of thing. I know for myself, it's been a very intense Lent. Lent is a time for me of kind of I like the word balance. It's a time of coming back into balance. And people talk a lot about giving something up for Lent, but for me, I look at my life and I say, what do I have too much of? What do I not have enough of? How can I come into balance? So there may be things I need to give up, but there may also be things I need to take on. And I've been doing a lot of discernment this Lent, kind of sitting with all of these internal dynamics and desires, and sifting through them. It may sound strange to say this, I'm 32 years old, but I am aware that time is passing. And I'm not old, but I'm also not at the very beginning of my life. I'm nearing kind of the middle set of years, and there are real gifts of experience that I have that I didn't have 10 or 15 years ago, and there's still a lot of potential. And so I'm really asking myself, how am I living and how do I want to live my life? And what choices do I want to make today that are really going to impact the rest of my life? So you all know that I'm a brother at a monastery. I have not made my life profession yet. And as the life profession draws closer, it's about 18 months off, I really find myself asking, do I want to be a father? Do I want to be a husband? Do I want to be a monk? And the answer to all three questions is yes. But it's not really a zero-sum game. It's also looking at, I have a life here, a real life with real people in it, which means I have the beauties of a real life, but I also have the frustrations of a real life. And I have the kind of fantasy over here of what could be. And when you really compare reality and fantasy, one weighs much more heavily than the other. So that's all to say that I've really just been in the mud. I've been like going through the muck of life and getting dirty in it, and I don't have a lot of clarity. My clarity is actually not to have clarity right now and to be living from day to day, which of course is how we live our lives, is from day to day. So I share all of that because I'm always talking about being real and authentic, and so I need to put that into practice to be real and authentic with you all, and hopefully some of what I deal with in my own life is also helpful for you in your life. And I guess what I'm realizing now is that whatever choices I make in my life, there is a cost to them. And so people tell me, oh, you're choosing between two goods, and isn't this really beautiful? And it is, and that's true. But choosing between two goods also means that whatever choice you make, there's going to be pain involved in it, and you're going to have to let something go. So in the midst of it all, I also have been listening to the invitation to surrender, surrender, surrender at a deeper and deeper level to life and to what I would call God, to that experience of wholeness that kind of holds everything. And that sort of Julian of Norwich saying, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Recognizing as I sit with that sense that the wellness, that all shall be well, is not a wellness that's devoid of the complications and frustrations and pains of real life, but a wellness that kind of holds all of those in a greater context. So that's not to be like gloomy, but it is to be real about, some of what I've been going through recently. That's also kept me away from podcasting. But in the midst of that, my fiber arts practice has been something that's helped me to stay grounded, and also to find balance in other ways in my life. So I've been, my fiber arts practice keeps me kind of plugged into this moment rather than kind of like out in the crazy world. But something I've also been noticing is it can be an escape. Which is a good thing and not so good thing. So I can get so wrapped up in my sewing and my knitting that I'm not tending to some of the other areas in my life that I want to tend to. For me, reading and writing being those areas. So I've also, in the last couple weeks, been trying to craft less and to write more and to read more. Which means I'm kind of slowing down on my production. Productivity for me can be a real way of avoiding dealing with my life and my feelings and all of that. So it's really a balance there, trying to find the balance. That's the theme. I came up with a theme. Balance is the theme. Okay, this will be the balance episode. So with all of that said, I'm really just going to take like 15-20 minutes to walk you through some projects that I've been engaged in and some of the things that I have learned from them. Then I have a couple of announcements after that, and I will wrap it up. So it's probably going to be a bit shorter this time after an 8-9 minute prologue. So you'll notice I'm wearing two of my recent sewing projects. This one on top is the Waistcoat, W-A-S-T-E, Waistcoat that I made. In the last episode, I talked about having these two shirts, old shirts, that I was going to use for material for a waistcoat. And I got a lot of energetic feedback from folks telling me, do not use the broadcloth shirt for the lining of the waistcoat. And then I also had some feedback saying, do use the broadcloth for the waistcoat lining. So having to choose between competing feedback, I decided to do what I wanted to do, which was to use the broadcloth lining. And just a little word here, as one of you apologized for having given such energetic feedback to me. Please don't apologize for that kind of thing. I'm eager to hear your feedback. I'm eager to hear your suggestions and advice. If I don't take it, it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it. It just means that I'm someone who's very stubborn and I have to learn by doing it. And so that's just how I work. And in this case, it turned out well because the broadcloth lining actually works very well in this project. But I can see how it wouldn't work in like a suit coat or another kind of jacket or in pants or something like that, you know. But in this particular project, it's a small project, so it really does work. And I will show this all to you, but just to give you the details, this is the Belvedere waistcoat is the pattern from Thread Theory Designs. And as I found I have to do with their patterns so far, I had to grade between sizes. So I cut out the medium pattern for the top all the way to the underarms, and then I graded out to the large at the for the waist. The materials I used, I'll just take it off for you now. The materials I used were for the outer here. I used a navy blue wool and nylon blend shirt, and for the lining I used a beautiful blue and white striped broadcloth shirt. For the interfacing, I sewed in some poly cotton twill that we had extra of. Thank you to Bill, who recommended not using the iron-on fusible interfacing because he said that it would wrinkle and it would hold the creases and stay wrinkled. I haven't had a problem with that with this interfacing, so that worked out great. So it is not it's not a perfect project, but the fit is great on it. Oh, I forgot to mention the buttons here, which are horn buttons from Fringe & Company. They are, and I didn't buy them for this, I bought them for a different project and ended up using them for this one. But they are leftovers from the industrial food system, so they're really a good ecological alternative, plus they're just really beautiful. But I will show you how this fits me. Oops. This is, let's see if I can scoot back a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the shirt that's underneath it in a minute, and you can already see a little bit of the fit problems with that. But see, the waistcoat fits great. It's got welt pockets, my first time doing welt pockets. They were not hard at all. People talk about how terrible welt pockets are. I have found with sewing, and I found this with knitting too, that people tell you things are just really hard and horrible, and if you just don't listen to them, you don't know they're supposed to be hard, and oftentimes they're not. Now that's not always true, but it's often true that things are not as hard as people make them out to be. So I definitely found that with the welt pockets. I just followed the sew along on Thread Theory's website. They have these wonderful, very thorough sew-alongs, and so I followed that one, and it was great, and I had no trouble with the welt pockets. So I'm going to insert a little video that I made on Instagram, in my Instagram stories about the waistcoat. I'll put that here, and you'll get to see the whole project from the very beginning to when I finished it and tried it on. Hey everyone. So, as I mentioned in my last podcast episode, I am going to make a waistcoat from materials that I have found around the house. I'm not going to buy anything. So, I'm not going to buy anything for this waistcoat except for the pattern, which I got from Thread Theory Designs. So, I have cut out the pattern. And I've gone ahead and graded it between the medium for the chest and the large for the waist. And now I'm ready to cut out the fabric. The main fabric that I'm using is a wool nylon blend navy blue shirt that a brother gave to me. It was an extra large. So it should have enough material to provide fabric for the outer parts of this waistcoat. For the shirt lining, I'm going to be using another shirt that a brother gave me, also an extra large, and it's a cotton broadcloth. Now, I have been warned by two people against using this as a lining material. I had another tailor who said that it would be fine to use it for a lining material. And I'm both stubborn and an experiential learner. So I've decided I am going to use this, even against the advice that I have received. And I just have to try it. And if it doesn't work, then I only have myself to blame. But I also will have learned a lot from it. So I am going to use the cotton for the lining. And for the interfacing, I'm using a white cotton poly twill that we have yards and yards and yards of from our habit making. So I have now removed the pockets after deboning this wool shirt, and you see that there is a lot of dirt and the pocket lines all around the shirt here. So it's now time to wash this wool shirt in a little warm water and some Eucalan wool wash, and I will lay it out to reblock and dry. And while it's doing that, while the shirt is drying, I'm going to cut out the rest of the fabric and get started on that part of the process. My other project, and I love that waistcoat. And it's perfect in this kind of weather because it's kind of hot and then cold and hot and then cold. I also have been sewing a lot of Fairfield button-ups, also from Thread Theory Designs. This is a slim fit button-down shirt or collared shirt. It doesn't actually include a button-down option. And I've made 3 of them now, and I'm working on the 4th one. The big thing with making these shirts for me has been getting the fit right. So the first one I made in the average figures medium size. I told you about that one. I probably showed it to you, and it was too small in the waist. Then I made one in the larger figures medium size, and it was really billowy in the waist. So I went back in and I altered both of those. I cut out fabric on the one that was too large and then redid the side seams. And in the one that was too small, I went in, I ripped out the fell seams, and then I just put in a 1/4 inch seam, just a normal seam, and then did a zigzag stitch so it wouldn't unravel. And now both of those fit pretty well. This one that I'm wearing is the 3rd one that I made. I made it with short sleeves, obviously. It's in 100% linen that I got from fabric.com. And I picked linen because, and I found out I really like working with linen. I picked linen because it uses much less water to be processed than cotton does. So it is, it depends on how you gauge environmental sustainability, but it is a lot more sustainable, or noticeably more sustainable, than most cottons are. So it tends to be a little more expensive than cotton as well, but that's the price that you pay. So I'll probably be sewing a lot in linen. This shirt, I modified the average medium, which is the first one I started with, and I modified it so that instead of curving in at the side seam, it just goes straight down at the side seam, which essentially added in an extra, probably like inch on each side. So I probably got an extra 2 inches of ease in the side. You can see this one, so there is a small fit problem, which I'll talk about in a minute, but you can see this one fits at the waist, fits great, fits well up here and around. One thing that I did not count on is this right here. So I really don't like shirts and sweaters that are too long, so I tend to go a little bit shorter on the hem length of my shirts and my sweaters than most patterns call for. I think I took this one up by 2 inches. It would have been down to, say, here, without the modification. Now, I figured out that 2 inches is a little too much to take out of this shirt. Because especially made in linen, that crease right there at the waist comes in, and then when I stand up, it's like I have to pull it down to keep it from being a crop top. Not a cute look, certainly on me. So I added in a little bit more length on the one that I'm making right now. But that is what I'm finding with sewing, is so much of it is about getting the fit just right, and it takes, you know, I'm on my 4th one right now, and now the arm fit is a little off. I did try different seams on it. I'm trying French seams instead of fell seams because I was lazy, and it turns out that took too much of the seam allowance out, so now I have to add a little more in. But anyway, I'm rambling, but I'm finding with sewing it's really fit that's the deal, and that just takes time. It really takes time and making patterns again and again and again. I'm getting a little tired of this making button-down shirts now, so I'm moving on to pants. I've cut out the pattern for the Jedediah pants from Thread Theory, and I got some dye for white polycotton twill, and I'm gonna dye it a gray color. Thanks for the advice on natural dyeing that some folks have sent me. As I've looked into a little bit more, it seems like natural dyeing is not actually an effective way to dye something with a high polyester content. I would not have bought twill that's 50% polyester, but we have yards and yards of this stuff laying around, and so it's actually a more ecological choice, in my opinion, to use what I have rather than to go out and buy something totally new. So I bought 3 different colors of dye with the idea that I'll make 3 different pairs of pants and hopefully get the fit just right on these pants as well, which is good because my pants are getting holes in them, so I need a new pair of pants. I do have some more projects that I've been working on, but my big focus has been to get works in progress off of the needles. I have too many projects going right now between sewing and knitting, and that's also a part of balance, coming back to that theme that I figured out a minute ago, is just finding the balance in how many projects I really can keep going at one time and what kind of projects to be working on. So I'm working slowly on a cabled cardigan for a friend of mine. I think I may have shown it to you in a previous episode. And then I have made some simple ribbed socks for myself. But I'm really finding like stockinette and garter and ribbing is very soothing to me right now. So even this cable pattern is a 16-row repeat. There are only 2 rows of that are cabled. The rest of them are 2x2 ribbing. So that even is a lot of ribbing. And I'm just really, really enjoying the soothing, gentle character of stockinette, garter, and ribbing. So I just finished in my car ride from Washington, D.C. back home. I finished this beautiful Drachenfels shawl. This is a design by Melanie Berg, and you start at this end, you cast on a few stitches here, and then you increase on one side and decrease on the other, so that you get, it is an irregularly shaped shawl, but it sort of comes out to a triangle too. It's just a triangle that's a little bit different from a normal triangle shawl. Now the yarn I used for this was very special yarn. This is yarn that I got in the UK on Lindisfarne when I was there on pilgrimage last October. And Lindisfarne, as you may know, is where St. Aidan founded his monastery when he went to the north of England. And so it was a really special place for me to be visiting. And as we got off the bus, I just sort of said to myself, oh, it would be so nice if there were yarn that I could get on Lindisfarne. Well, the market hall there, it was a Saturday, I think, was having a big craft fair. And lo and behold, I found yarn for sale. This woman named Jenny spins her own yarn, all from the British Isles. So there are 3 different colors that I put in this shawl, and I bought 3 skeins of sport weight yarn from her. And it's mostly Shetland. One of them has some BFL in it. I actually think there's bamboo in one of them also. I think in the gray there's some bamboo. So I'm sure the bamboo probably didn't come from the UK, but maybe it did. But anyway, it was just a really special souvenir to bring back because it was beautiful yarn, it was hand spun, and she lives right in the area there. So it really is a shawl to remind me of that place. And I was looking for the best pattern to use and looking and looking and looking, and I finally came across this shawl, the Drachenfels, that uses 3 different colors of yarn in sport weight, and I thought, well, that would be a great shawl to use it for. And then one of my Instagram buddies, Jess, I think, was it for New Year's maybe, bought me the pattern. She saw it in my wish list on Ravelry and bought it for me. So now it also carries the memory of this friendship that I've developed online, that hopefully someday we may meet one another in person. But so it just carries all of these memories in it, and it is, I love the colors. I mean, I especially love this part of it here. I think this part turned out beautifully. This part I'm not as happy with. These two colors, this kind of gray and purple, they don't contrast as well as I would like. I thought about ripping the whole thing out and redoing it so that this part was one of the light colors, and then the dark purple was here, and then continued into the striping here and would continue to the end of the shawl. But I just wanted this shawl to be done too, so I was at that point of being done, and I said it's good enough, and I do like it, and it fits a place in my wardrobe that I didn't have already. A kind of lightweight shawl. I've been wearing it most of today, which has been pretty chilly. So that's really it, just loving the garter and the color and the memories, and something that is simple and easy. It doesn't all have to be complex cables all the time. I can find the balance of the two kinds of projects in there. And something where my sewing and my knitting are coming together is I'm actually moving into a bit of a simpler kind of design. So I'm liking simpler colors, more natural, lighter colors, not lighter necessarily, but more natural colors, and simpler designs as well. So like the linen here, this beautiful striped linen, and the simplicity of that waistcoat. So the last couple things that I want to share with you, one is a surprise giveaway. Colleen, who I had drawn for the Cabled Monster giveaway, didn't get in touch with me, so I decided it's been about 6 weeks, I think, since I recorded that last podcast, and I did another random drawing from that thread to win the Cabled Monster sweater. So Genevieve P, number 19 in that thread from Quebec, I drew your name, and if you will send me your contact information or your mailing information on Ravelry, then I will be happy to get that sweater in the mail to you. I hope you enjoy it, either the sweater itself or the yarn. Genevieve wrote a beautiful post about learning new things from her kids all the time. And I think we can learn so much from those who are younger than us, just as we can learn a whole lot from those who are older. So that intergenerational learning is a really beautiful thing, and I'm glad that you know the joy of it, Genevieve, and I hope that we all can learn the joy of it too. So send me your information and I'll get the sweater out to you. The last thing I want to let you know about is a couple of, this is as if a whole podcast where you're talking about your own life is not self-promotion, some more specific self-promotion here. You will have a couple of opportunities to hear more from me in the very near future. On March 20th, which I believe is a Sunday, I will be on, or maybe it's March 19th. Anyway, very soon, March 19th or 20th, I will be interviewed on Christy Glass Knits, Christy Glass's interview YouTube show. So she was out here earlier this month, and we had a wonderful conversation. I showed her around the monastery, and I think we talked for like an hour and a half. So I'm not sure how short the episode will be. I don't know what she's edited it down to, but you'll have an opportunity to catch me on her podcast. And it was great fun to have her here. She's just absolutely delightful in person. And as I told her, I was just a little bit starstruck because she's Christy Glass, and here she was at the monastery. So anyway. And then I was also interviewed the very next week for the Love to Sew podcast, which is an audio podcast. And that episode will come out on March 27th. I think that's what they said. They usually put them up on Tuesday, I believe. So just check my Instagram feed. I will put up posts for both of those days when those interviews come out, but you'll have a chance to hear me then. And I talk a lot about the things that I talk about on this show as well. And then last but not least, as I've mentioned before, I am leading a retreat called A Maker's Pilgrimage after the podcast that will cover a lot of the things we talk about on here. And we, as if, the royal we, that I talk about on here. And that is April 4th through 6th, which is a Wednesday through Friday. So we'll gather Wednesday evening, and we will finish up on Friday morning. And there will be time for conversation and hanging out, and then I'll also be giving reflections about kind of using our craft, defined very broadly, using our craft to take us deeper into our lives. So please check that out as well if you're interested in participating in that. So it has been good to catch up with you all, and I look forward to hearing from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out via Instagram or Ravelry. My username on both is Knitting Monk, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for checking in, and happy making.